When was the last time you felt heard? And when was the last time you truly listened?
Hey, go. Asteroid of fear.
Welcome to Unfiltered Friday, where there is no script and no polish. But I want to talk about communication because communication has been the one thing that has been plaguing me lately. It has been my Achilles. And, you know, communication issues or failures are at the root of most conflict as it relates to relationships, families, mental health, and even caregiving. So, you know, talking, just talking isn't necessarily communicating. There's speaking, there's understanding, there's listening. Those are all parts of communication. One of the biggest habits that a lot of us have, um, and people I've been communicating with, you got to give me a second while I plug in my laptop for the listeners and the viewers can see me fidgeting around over here. But yeah, um, common habits are waiting to talk instead of listening, defending instead of receiving. You know, in my communication, you know, say most arguments aren't about the issue, they're about not feeling heard. And when somebody interrupts you, or you take a conversation in a position of defense, defending your actions and or your statements, then yeah, it that's when kind of communication becomes the issue. There's often times when um it's always with the ones we love most, I think. um like my dad, he has Parkinson's, and so his memory isn't great. My wife, her mind goes a million miles an hour. So there are often times where it's, you know, she just speaks it whenever it pops into her mind, regardless of what I'm saying. And that becomes frustrating to me because I'm in the middle of a sentence and trying to get a point across. But whatever it is I'm saying kind of prompts and or triggers her, reminds her of something that she needed to tell me, something we need to do, whatever the case may be. But it'll ultimately throw off my line of thinking, and then I kind of forget either what I was thinking about because I get irritated at the interruption, um, or, you know, kind of my thing is forget it because silence is still a message, but that can be dangerous. Um, I am a person that if if I'm communicating with you and you're not making the effort or you seem dismissive, then I'll just say forget it and kind of shut down. But then those unspoken thoughts, those can turn into resentment, emotional withdrawal, which I am 100% guilty of, miscommunication. Um, I suppose I could take a deep breath and take a healthy pause um, before I shut down, you know. And, but it is one of those things that, you know, my wife and I going on 20 years and just having celebrated our 13th wedding anniversary. Um, yeah, neither one of us are mind readers. And so if they don't know, you don't express it, then it's not going to get heard. Yeah, closed mouths don't get fed. So, but that's kind of where I've been, and something I'm trying to avoid is shutting down and becoming silent. Because oftentimes, when I talk to my therapist, it's, what would you say? I guess sometimes you're communicating an emotional need or something that's part of that. And if let's say I get interrupted and then I kind of shut down, I'm like, forget about it. Then my emotional need doesn't get met. Then I resent the person I'm talking to and shut down from. And ultimately, it just kind of snowballs into something bigger. You know, us men are, man, notorious for shutting down, stepping aside, walking away, and kind of like, just forget it. I'll do it myself, or that kind of feeling. I know you guys out there know what I'm talking about. Like, forget it. Like, why am I wasting my breath if you're not going to listen? And then, for me, what that looks like is isolating, bottling emotions, and the same way you have the compound effect with positive things, you can also have the compound effect with negative things. It's like these instances, they just stack up, and they compound. And I may not say anything, and then it all comes out at once. But sometimes, of course, that silence I'm taking is every once in a while it's a step away just to reconcile my thoughts. So I have the appropriate thing to say. And I express the appropriate emotion that goes with it. But that's kind of difficult for my wife sometimes because, you know, that silence and that distance while I'm reconciling, it is distance, and you can feel the wedge, and I trying to get better at that because relationships are hard. They take work, be that your personal relationships or your intimate relationships. But it's something I'm trying to get better at and really peel back and look at the root cause because that's what we're kind of looking at here, root causes. Now, whether it's a pattern of behavior we've picked up as we've grown up, due to family dynamics, sometimes your parents might be, kids are to be, seen and not heard. All those old little things they used to say. Um, or something as simple as, my wife and I had a rough couple of days of communicating where, you know, if if it wasn't about what was said, it was the way it was said. The tone. You get in fights about that. It's like, oh, well, what did you mean by that? Or like I just did a little ugh, like a sigh or a shoulder shrug. You know, body language is a part of it too. Posturing, positioning. I mean, you guys know I'm a huge fan of Chase Hughes. I got the ellipsis manual here. And you know that behavioral cues, unspoken, is just as important as spoken. Can determine if someone's lying, telling the truth, being deceptive, or maybe some other subtle little hint or cue within that communication. But for me personally, what I'm trying to avoid as I approach 50 years of age is I've gotten a pattern of kind of shut down, silence, time to think about it, and then, figure out what it really is. Because I think sometimes, I was telling my wife the other day that, you know, when we're not communicating well, getting along, I guess you could call it, it's, I think from her perspective, I can come across as being mad, but I'm actually not mad. I'm actually, I think I told her the other night, I go, I'm actually annoyed. I'm annoyed that we're not communicating well together, um, because it's hurtful, you know? And the hurt is, doesn't necessarily have to be from the words, but the hurt is feeling like you're not understood. And that's a lot about what communication is, understandings between people, be that boundaries, compliments, what I think of you as a friend, um, boundaries you should and should not cross, all that. And of course, our communication style, I think, evolves with age, with roles, you know, and it starts young. I mean, we got family communication and old roles here. Some notes I took. Family dynamics can distort communication with assumptions, um, triggers from childhood roles. This is post holiday. My wife and I, a marathon run of, we had our cruise, which was a little bit of time together. And then we came right out of that into our anniversary and prepping for Christmas and the holidays, 4 Christmases, and then, you know, not even a full week home, back out of town for my brother in law's 40th birthday. Um, and you get the family get togethers with all these different families, of course. And, I'm an observer, I'm a participator too. But as a podcaster, as a person who's interested in Chase Hughes, I like to observe. like telling my wife. Um, Also, Andrew Bustamante referencing that is like he who talks the most is not necessarily in control of the conversation. And you got to go like, what are conversations and communications? And, there's information being passed and conveyed. And depending on what your role is, what the setting and context is, uh, sometimes as a listener, you might have the advantage within the conversation because you're listening to everything that's said in this communication pass. But, how this kind of plays in is you can see it in family dynamics. Um, I mean, even my own family, as adults, as me, a 50-year-old man almost, with parents in their 70s and late 60s, watching their communications, um, both how they communicate with me individually, um, and then how they communicate with each other, what truly is, and kind of uh, versus what's conveyed, I guess you could say. How it takes shape, almost like the telephone game. Will I heard from, or this was said, or this was inferred. And yeah, I think a great example is, one of my aunts, um, the oldest aunt still alive on one side, when they were growing up, my grandmother and my dad's mom suffered a burn. And I don't know how old my aunt was at the time, but she was the oldest. And so she kind of had to help take care of her mom, but also had to be the kind of caretaker of the kids, because you got to remember this is back in the day, and that side grew up very poor. They raised their own food and stuff, but I think there was five or six of them, and I mean this little tiny one bedroom, maybe one and a half bedroom house. And you can see though, with her having had to be the responsible one, how it still plays out in the way that they all communicate and interact at, you know, 70s and their 60s. The sibling dynamic is still there. They still kind of bicker about the same bullshit. Kind of like I'm the oldest, or I'm the this, or I'm the that, or oh yeah, yeah. I guess it's too like kind of people assume that, I guess, you're always gonna be that same person, or maybe that you can't change, even if you have changed. Um, so it's interesting. I find it, having a discussion with my therapist about different things of, um, I spent a lot of years in healthcare, from the emergency room to management. I was a personal trainer before that. Uh, I've had two bouts. I've lost 38 pounds, I think 40 pounds the first go round in my 20s. Got when I ballooned up to 185, and then 64 pounds after ballooning up to 213. And but I have family members who have seen me do this, but would not take a lick of advice from me. Maybe just because they don't agree with other areas of my life, or the fact that I never returned to corporate and didn't hold down a quote unquote normal job by what is considered society standards. But even my therapist was like, you know, I'm a therapist, but do you think anybody in my family takes advice from me or would? She goes, no. Proximity. Um, you're always that same little person within the family dynamic, So it's like, even though we're adults, sometimes we still communicate like the kids we used to be. But, for me, having no siblings, that's not an issue, but mine is, yeah, within the family, I would say. But it's getting better. And I think this is kind of important because I spent the morning with my father, um, taking care of different things as he has Parkinson's, and um, shoring up like legal kind of things of whether it's being beneficiaries at the bank or having access to accounts to X, Y, and Z. So, should something happen, I know what to take care of and how to take care of it and where to access the money to take care of it, what to shut down, what to cancel, all that kind of stuff. As I've gotten further into, these are all kind of, I think, in a sense, things we're all going to have to do one day. And they seem kind of like common sense, or they're always kind of this like, hey, I'll get to it when I'm old, or when I'm in that phase of my life, I'll worry about it and concern myself with it. But, you know, life can change in an instant. Yours and everybody around you, their life can be different overnight or sometimes gradually. I believe I've spoken of, um, my wife's ex husband and his parents, and the relationship we all have as kind of two families and sharing children and sharing responsibility. And, you know, she's come down with what they believe is ALS, and she's declined rapidly, but in that process has lost her ability to communicate. And I think I might have said something on one of the Unfiltered Fridays regarding, we were there, and, the speech therapist with Toby, Tobii, came and set up the Dynavox machine that goes to the wheelchair that tracks eye movements to the keyboard, and you can text, talk, has a speaker. You can pre-program in phrases such as uh, thirsty, water. Um, I respectfully requested the speech therapist to let's make a pre-program of pendejo. uh, I was trying to actually cheer up Grandma Gonzalez with that comment um, for her husband, Mr. Gonzalez. So, we were trying to make light of it, even though it's a very serious situation, for all family members involved. In that, her role as the mom and grandma due to this condition almost has essentially been stripped from her. None of us anticipated this. It wasn't something that she was doing or not doing that made this happen. It just happened. And, you know, now we're left to deal with it, support, and figure it out. And figure out a way to integrate it to what is now your your new life, everyone's new life, everyone she has contact with, regardless of if it's daily contact or, you know, intermittent seasonal contact, such as myself when we visit. Um, but yeah, it's super difficult. Somebody who wants to communicate and can't, and then the other people can't understand her. So yeah, it's communication is highly important. How we do it, why we do it, our ability to do it, and when I say ability, that also goes into like you're alive now. So now is the time. It's like telling somebody I love you or whatever it is. I always say, for me, you say it now while the person is here to hear it because it doesn't mean anything when they're in the ground and you're standing around them. I mean, or you cremate them, you know, you say it now while they're here. What if that's the last? What if that was the one little thing that kept them going or gave them the will? So yeah, it's like don't be shy. And us as men, man, men emotion and language together. As a Gen Xer, you don't complain. You don't, yeah, you suppress everything. At least that's what we were taught. Um, there's a note here: emotional vocabulary versus emotional shutdown. Man, this is where I struggle, but it it's it's hard. Like my wife can instantly see when something impacts me. It's just like I go like stone face, just Nothing. And it's not healthy. It seems standoffish. Or my wife would say, like, you don't feel safe to talk to. Because I'll be like, hey, like, if you see me struggling, like, say something. She'll be like, well, sometimes it doesn't feel safe to. And it's interesting because I can remember as a young man, sometimes back in the day, I mean, even though I was a little guy, 4'11", 90 pounds in high school, and a lot of girls were always like, oh, I would date him, but he's too short. He's cute, you know. Um, and I was trying to think of where I was going with that. Because something else kind of popped into my brain that was like, uh, mm, it'd be unpopular to say at the moment, just because everybody gets so butthurt over everything these days. I mean, you can't say whatever is what it actually is, you know. It's like you have to beat around the bush. You have to use fucking terms that don't make any sense or that dance around the subject. Um, oh, that's what it was sometimes because I was a very in like thoughtful, pensive, thinking about my thinking kind of a person, always wanting bigger ideas. I was always kind of dialed in, focused in those younger years, high school years. And, my cousin, because I didn't grow up with any siblings, um, she would always tell me, like, well, like some girls were interested in you, but they're afraid to approach you because you seem mad or you seem, kind of intense. I was like, oh no, that's just me. I was serious about my plans for the future of what I wanted to do. I guess while everybody else was fucking off in high school, um, you know, for those people who's like high schools was the best years of their life. For me, I was like, high school is like just meh. That's why I graduated early. I was like, this has nothing to offer me. Not in terms of education, not in terms of, um, you know, I wasn't dating. I was too short for all the girls. So, it's not like I was going to marry my high school sweetheart because I didn't have one. And so, yeah, I graduated early and got out. But I had a plan and I was serious about that. And you got to remember, this is a different time, late 80s, early 90s. But it was interesting because when my wife once told me, like, hey, like, you just don't feel safe to approach, even though I want her to approach me and say, hey, babe, what's wrong? Like, what about that bothered you? Um, but I'm playing my part by just the way I look, just, and sometimes back in the day, it's not that I was unhappy or anything, but I mean, when I'm into something like, or I'm on a mission, like I'm not like a smile for the camera on the red carpet moment type of a thing. Like, you know, when I Uber, whatever it is, you see me, I'm not like out shopping, just enjoying most things I do is on a mission, straight to it, straight line, with purpose, with intent. And so, yeah, sometimes I guess I can come across as like, oh, don't approach that guy. But it's not that. It's just I'm locked in my own little world. And if that, you know, makes some people hesitant, then so be it. However, I meet people in public all the time, strangers, some of the people I've had on as guests. You got to remember, on some of them, it's my first time meeting them. Some of the guests I met through random interactions at a concert or something. So I am a very approachable, talkative guy. Um, but if I'm on a mission, it may look like I'm not. But yeah, I felt that that was kind of interesting. And, one of the other things with that as men and that kind of serious or um, even kind of irritated type of a thing or reaction, I guess growing up, anger was kind of accepted, you know. Sometimes silence is too. They're safe defaults in a way, but should they be? I mean, I think silencing people out, yeah. There's somebody that's not good for you or it's just going to go nowhere. Maybe much like political debates, then sometimes silence. But anger, that's the one, man. That as men, we've grown up in almost a way that it's acceptable to be angry, whether that's angry at other people or sometimes it's angry at yourself. I mean, I get pissed off at myself all the time, whether it's decisions I have made or am in the process of making. It's like, oh, yeah, I get pissed off at myself. Sometimes that's the look. It's not even like, hey, I'm mad at you. Maybe I'm mad at myself for choosing that, wasting my time on it, thinking it would be different. Um, just like a series of bad decisions can compound, and you're like, man, if I hadn't done that one thing, like it would have saved me all this heartache or all this bullshit. But, sometimes it happens. But that's kind of, we're going to talk about where some of the issues are with communication. But let's talk about the what happens when you get good communication, when it goes right. And this will tie back into some of this other part of going, why I get fucking irritated sometimes. If presence is the highest form of communication, listening to the other person before you fucking interject your fucking Either rude or dumbass thought. Let's spin it. Let's make it positive. Maybe it's the perfect solution. Who knows? But you can still wait your fucking turn, right? It's like the being a kid. Raise your fucking hand. Wait your fucking turn. Um, but I learned a lot about this as a caregiver. Sitting with old Buckaroo. Um, Even some of the people I care for now. I was on a spent many hours with a client yesterday, and there was there were some moments in the ride where we were just silent, and that was okay. We talked some, but we had some silence in there as well. And I think that that's kind of a its own way of communication between two people, that if you two can sit in silence together and don't feel the need to fill the space, that's its own thing. That's its own presence. Oh my goodness, I hear thunder outside. It is about to start pouring, which means it might be prime time for some delivery this evening. And people in the rain don't like to get out. And I always make good money in the rain because I got good rain boots and a good raincoat. But back to being present and listening. Especially with Buck, but also with other people. Men, men, fellas, take fucking notes. And you should know this by now. Sometimes your partner, be that man or woman, how, however you go, that's your business. But listening without fixing. As men, we're fixers. I was a manager of healthcare facilities. Everything is about solving problems, fixing things to keep it going, keep it going. Sometimes they don't want you to fix it. Sometimes there's nothing to be fixed. Sometimes they just need you to listen. Sometimes you just need to hold space. Sit in the discomfort with them. And what makes that so hard? Well, most of us as humans, maybe minus narcissists and psychopaths and serial killers, um, seeing somebody else in distress or unhappy makes us uncomfortable. And we're actually trying to solve them or fix them, not so they feel better, but so you yourself feels better because you're uncomfortable with them being uncomfortable. Yeah. And so we're a little fucking human thing we do. But in caregiving, sometimes, hey, I'm not the nurse. I'm not the doctor. There's some things I can do and some things I can't do. But I can sure sit here and listen. I can talk. I can make conversation. I can be present. It's one of my favorite things to do. That's why it was so hard when Buck Said, no, I don't want the pacemaker. And the doctor's like, well, you know you're going to die. He's like, yeah, it could be in the next 5 minutes, or it could be in the next 5 days, or who knows. But without this intervention, it's 100%. I mean, it's 100% intervention, or not for all of us. But at that time, that was a huge moment of, from all the conversations I had had with Bug, knowing and understanding him, getting to that point and looking at him say no, and knowing, like, my role was just to be there for you for whatever God has planned, decided for you. Either we walk to rejuvenation, or if it's the end of the line, then I'll walk with you. And that's what was so hard and what was so hurtful when he said, no, I don't want that. And I knew I could do nothing to convince him otherwise. It's not my place, not my decision. Hmm. As a man, that is a hard place to be in. We're not used to that. Most of our jobs have been building shit, fixing shit, solutions, especially if you're like done some of the things I am. It's like, I don't want to hear why we can't do it. I want to hear how we're going to do it. Unless you're coming with solutions, like, that whole, like, if you can't say anything nice, just don't say anything at all. Process improvement and change is similar. I'd always tell the team, like, hey, bad processes will fail on their own. We don't have to make it try. We don't have to make an effort. We're just being asked to try something. It may be the next best thing since sliced bread. It may make our lives 10 times easier. We won't know unless we try. But, you know, unless you're going to bring solutions on what's the best way to try it, if you can't do that, then just zip it, because it adds nothing of value. But yeah, you take that whole mindset, and then for me, yeah, I was the one that had to accept Buck's no, just as much as the doctors. But I was the one spending every day with him, every moment he needed me. Probably some moments he didn't even want me in there, but hey, that's not what I was there for. So I was the one that was uncomfortable with him saying no. Not him. He was secure in his faith and ready. I learned a lot that day. Hmm. Let's. I'm gonna start wrapping this up. as I'm expecting the wife home. We're gonna have to go get the kiddo from school, get this uploaded, see what kind of Friday we're gonna have. But yeah, as we wrap this up, you know, I would ask yourself, what conversations are you avoiding? Who deserves better communication from you? What are you afraid might happen if you speak up? Ask yourself those questions. Also, I would encourage you with, a friend, a loved one, have one honest conversation this week. See if you can react less and listen more. Maybe observe those around you. See how they're conversing. See if they're interrupting. See if they're listening. See if they're just waiting to get their point across. I remember I interviewed somebody who was like, you know, when you when you go into certain conversations, it's like maybe it was like the art of listening is like, hey, you're not going in with an agenda to change somebody's mind or get them to do something. You're just having a constructive, conversation. Oftentimes it's most things are geared towards getting our own point across, getting somebody to side with us, see things our way, um, or in like many things, because we're this capitalist nation, it's about winning, winning the argument, winning whatever it is, as opposed to just taking it in as information, and then determining how to respond or what to do with the information. Because, like I said, fellas, sometimes your partner, your wife, your spouse, girlfriend, whoever, they just want you to listen. They just need an ear. They just need to vent. They may not want you to fix it. So go out there and practice. You know, be honest, be truthful. That's one of the biggest things I tell my daughter. And, like my business coach, he is all about accuracy. I think clarity, accuracy, whatever you want to call it. But without accuracy, it's like nothing doesn't matter if you don't have the truth. You can't make the best decision on how to move forward with something if you don't have the truth, if you don't have accuracy. It's the equivalent of having a bad GPS that's not calibrated. You'll get wrong directions, you're driving off of a fucking cliff, metaphorically speaking. And you don't want to do that with your life. So, say the thing, have the conversation, because silence can cost more than the truth. Be that opportunities, be that the reality of a situation, of what was meant, or what was said. You know, this could relate to a job, a career, a personal relationship, a marriage. Yeah, it all matters. So, once you're done listening to this, just ask yourself some questions. How am I as a communicator? How am I as a listener? Do I interrupt? Am I just trying to get my point across? Am I trying to win an argument? Or am I listening? Am I trying to see and hear their point of view? Am I reacting in such a way that they're willing to give me the truth, an entire point of view? You know, does my body language symbolize that I'm safe to be talking to about this or not? You know, arms crossed, closed off. Um, yeah, these little things, you know, think about them as it relates to yourself. And try to notice them next time you're speaking to a coworker, a friend, an intimate partner, one of your children. Look at their body language. Look also at how you approach. You know, are you starting something with in a demanding way? Or are you starting something that's like, oh my, you know, hey babe, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot about this, but you know, XYZ. Or hey, you know, this must have slipped my mind. I totally apologize for it, but you know, context, how you start something, setting it up, reading the room. You know, sometimes my wife and I, we argue over, sometimes she just blurts something out at me and I'm like, sounds like a demand and not a question or not a answer or not a uh, anything. But we're working on that. Hence this episode. Um, but it's hard. It it takes a lot of love, understanding, and humility on both party sides because nobody likes to feel attacked. I always say, like, when I'm communicating with her, also be willing to point out your own bullshit, okay? What you bring to it. Um, because it's not about you. Understand that if it's a conversation or a relationship, you're in it too. It's a two-way street. So do you understand what you bring to it? And it could be something as simple as your posture, your face. You know, if my spouse doesn't feel safe enough to approach me because I look like I'm fucking pissed off, then that silence, that not having the conversation could cost us. Because I might be thinking one thing, oh, she fucking hates me or something. She might be thinking another. You really don't know unless you have the conversation. Because, what is it? Men are from Mars, women from Venus, something like that. But yes, very, very, very different. Um, Emotional needs are different, all of it. And then, you know, you look back in childhood too, and You gotta factor all those things in. Like for me, I can look at my spouse and look at her family, the dynamics, and um, understand why sometimes she has challenges, but then also try to work on that and be like, hey, well, I'm not them. This is not that situation. So for us, let's do it differently. Let's do it better. And that is one of the biggest things, we're attempting to do for our kids, all of them. It's really all about trying to set the example and model communication. Um, even, I think I had a discussion with my wife the other day of we were driving and we had some words that weren't the best. Um, when do couples fight? In the car over directions, and she's trying to tell me to go one way, and there'd been some new construction, and sometimes like when you're sitting in a parking lot, the way it orients you, and sometimes it's not even you once you get on that road, the new construction area, it'll pick it up and reroute you, but it's like, hey, give me a second. Been an Uber driver for 3 years and change with a 98% satisfaction rating, achieved bonuses, all that. I'll figure it out. I'll get us there. Don't worry. I have to tell that to some of my clients too, because these older clients, you know, when I'm driving them, it's like, hey, they have one way, one route that they take, and that's the only route. And then they get all kind of like, hey, where are you going? This is an exact conversation. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to head down this way, and it runs right in there. Oh, I never go this way. I'm like, well, sir, you're with a Uber driver, 98% satisfaction. Um, I got this. This is what I do, you know? And sometimes you just, it's all how you approach it. I could have been defensive. I could have been like, like I was with my wife. Hey, I don't know what I would do without you and my mom telling me everything I need to do. I don't know how I would survive this entire life. So, which wasn't great, by the way. There was some silence in there, but then we picked back up the conversation. And as I was telling my wife, I go, hey, regardless of that, it is important because it's good for our daughter to see healthy discourse and then see us get back and work it out and not let something as stupid as directions and driving get in between, being together for 20 years because it can. Like I said, the compound effect, it all adds up. And then it'll turn into resentment. And then it's like, oh, so yeah, nip it in the bud. Open your mouth, especially for the men out there listening and women too. Although they're the ones usually opening their mouth. But, don't shut down. That's the key. You need to step away, think it over for a moment, do so. But, you know, try to keep that line of communication open. Yeah, take a moment, think about yourself and the next interactions you have. Just consider how you're showing up. Try to be present. Try not to interrupt. Let people get their thoughts out. Make sure your body language is receptive. depending on what message you're trying to convey. And yeah, the truth. Speaking of, yeah, on the way home last night, I was super tired because I'd gotten up at 4:30 a.m. the evening before, and after caregiving all day and on a super dark road, and I was having trouble staying awake and got pulled over for going outside the lines. It was a little two-lane road out in the sticks, kind of. You see deer and stuff, and I'd rather hit the little dun 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 over the shoulder because the shoulder will, yeah, you overcorrect and flip your car. But yeah, the panda bear lit me up, and I was just, hey man, I'm tired. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get home. It's 10 more minutes. He's like, you had anything to drink? Nope, nothing. All any time during the day. Any history of DUIs? I'm like, nope. I'm just tired. And he left me with a warning. So thank you. I think it was Verzi, Officer Verzi. If you hear him, if you know him, very kind, very professional. The warning woke me up and got me home. But yeah, he's like, you weren't texting, you weren't doing this. I was like, no. I go, I'm just tired. I was just super honest. And if you guys go back and listen to a couple of Unfiltered Fridays, I got another warning from an officer. He too was kind, um, but it was all from being truthful and open and honest. So that should tell you something. And of course, like I said, positioning, posture, all that. They could see. Like when the one cop, hey, I wasn't having a great week mentally, and he could tell. He was like, "Are you sure you're okay? Do you need anything?" And so I've really appreciated my interactions with public servants as of late. Um, yeah, stay off the internet. Don't believe the hype and all the bullshit about division and hate and all that. Face to face, most people are pretty solid out there trying to make it just like us. So, till next time, in upcoming, when you're out there in the world having conversations, communicating, yeah, I love meeting strangers, of course. Um, Give a shout out to, I think his name was Grant. Speedway, Lazy Days Coffee Speedway, or Lazy Days Speedway. I think it's a coffee shop in Austin, Texas, but I met the owner at the Woodlands Mall in the van store. So we were communicating. Like attracts like. Um, Interested in getting to know him more and more about him. And that's the great thing about communication is you just never know how it can go, where it can go, what opportunities can arise from it. And speaking of, you know, I have a couple of people I need to get back to in this 2026 because, man, it's a new year and got a lot of shit to do, frankly. I feel like 2025 has just run into 2026. Since kind of we got off the cruise, I don't think it's stopped yet. Maybe this will be the first weekend that's a pause for the cause, but we'll see. So, like I said, till next time, go out and be the person you want to meet. Peace.
Hey, go. Asteroid of fear.